pops on, singing to that highway song. Got a little naive smile, the kind that drives you out. Nothing like playing with fire, brings boy to life. Beat you with a fuse you light, you're good, you're dynamite. You made my day when you walked into town beside me, whispered with your eyes, let's go. You made me say what's your name, girl, you're lonely. Can I call you if I ever go down this road? And I can't seem to find the thing I want.
The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
14:20 in the morning, 14 minutes and 20 seconds worth of sports talk to get you through your daily commute. Hot takes, recaps, best bets, and a little humor to get your day going in the right direction. Sit back, grab your coffee, and let's get into it. All right, 14:20 in the morning for this 11th day of August, 2023. Today's show is brought to you by Caldera Lab and calderalab.com. Use promo code 1420lab at calderalab.com today and get the best, or 20% off the best in men's skincare. Also, remember, we are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Go to bellyupsports.com and check out all their great articles and other podcasts, such as the Corner Booth podcast and one of my favorites in the Craft Brewed Sports podcast. Those guys are always up for a good time over there at the Craft Brewed Sports podcast. Make sure you give them a listen. And thank you very much for making us a part of your day each and every day from 1420 World Headquarters, like I said, part of the Belly Up Media Network. Last night when Dave and I were recording the latest and greatest edition of the 1420 Sports Bar podcast, we started talking about the 92 and 93 Blue Jays. Obviously, we're a little bit biased being from up here in Canada, and we got to watch them a lot, obviously, because it was before the days of streaming and everything else that's going on with the world of sports now, how you can see every game all the time, no matter what, if you pay the right money or if you have some sort of a crooked deal, backhanded deal. But back then in Canada, 92, 93, if you didn't know who the Toronto Blue Jays were, even if you aren't a baseball fan, the Jays were one of the greatest teams in baseball history, in our opinion. Yeah, you could find TBS or WGN to see the Atlanta Braves or the Chicago Cubs if you didn't want to watch the Jays, but the Jays were on TSN back then, and they were on all the time, all over everywhere. They were setting attendance records at the Skydome. It was only about 2 years old at that point. I think it opened in 1990, I believe, but not 92. They put over 4 million people in that building in Toronto, and it was one of those teams that they just put everything together and had it right. And they were one of the greatest baseball teams that I can think of in that I've seen, that I've obviously seen play. I'm not going to include the 1927 Murderers Row New York Yankees. I'm not going to include the Big Red Machine in the early 70s, because I wasn't even born when those teams were going on. I know I'm old and everything, but I'm not that old. But the thing is that those Jays teams, we got to see them a lot, and they were a very, very good baseball team. Like I said, probably the greatest team that I've seen play live. And I'm going to even include the 98 Yankees, who won 114 or 115 games that season in 1998, and is widely considered to be one of the greatest baseball teams of all time. But that record is kind of skewed a little bit because they had a team in their division called the expansion Tampa Rays that year, and Tampa lost 100 games that year, and I think the Yankees went 11-1. Yeah, you can only play who's in front of you, and the Yankees you can only beat who's in front of you, and the Yankees took short order of the Tampa Bay Rays that year and took advantage of that. But those Jays teams, that's 92, I think they won 96 games, and in 93 they won 95 games, and the lineups themselves were all-star lineups, all-star teams right through and through, with their not only the offense that they had, but their pitching staff and the relievers, and right up through the lineup, they were great. Cito Gaston was the right kind of manager for that kind of a ball club. You have to manage attitudes. You have to manage personalities a lot. It has a lot to do with it. Cito Gaston, like his calm demeanor, kind of reminds me a lot of how Joe Torre was with those great Yankee teams. Very easygoing, wouldn't say much, but when it was time to get guys going and time to maybe say something to an umpire or get things going, Cito Gaston and Joe Torre were kind of one and the same. The way their demeanor on and off the field, and in the clubhouse and in the dugout, it was quite a pleasure to watch those guys. And Cito Gaston and Joe Torre, they're easygoing. Even the way they talk with the media are very comparable, and that's why I really like those Jays teams back then. Yeah, I mean, you can see all the crap behind me, all the Yankee stuff that I got going on here, but you obviously those Yankee teams were great in the 90s and in the 2000s. But those two Jays teams, yeah, they ended up spending a lot of money, and people forget they had the highest payroll in baseball at that point with the Whamco that they had and the guys that they had in the future that were on those lineups. But they had the right combination of young and old right through those lineups, and they had some pitchers. Yeah, they had a Tom Henke. That's how it came up last night, was Tom Henke in the Who Was Better segment. But you had a reliever in Tom Henke, and every team is built around your closer. If you don't have a closer, you don't have a team. In those 2 years, the Toronto Blue Jays, like I said, they had Tom Henke, and then they had Dwayne Ward the second year to win the World Series in '93. And when your cornerstones of your franchise are your pitching staff, and then the guys to finish games off, or you can put them out night in, night out, a la Mariano Rivera for those Yankee teams. You have yourself a very good chance of winning year in, year out, and doing some damage night in, night out. And that's what those Yankee teams and then those Jays teams that we're talking about, that's what they always seem to do, no matter what. You look at that lineup that they had there in Toronto. We'll talk about the '92 team first, but Whamco, everybody knows if you're Canadian who Whamco was. Devon White, Roberto Alomar, Paul Molitor, Joe Carter, John Olerud, and then you throw in a future Hall of Famer. Yeah, he was in the twilight of his career at that point in Dave Winfield. That's 6 guys out of 9 who hit the ball a little bit, and they had it going on a nightly basis. And you throw in a very serviceable catcher with Pat Borders, not a great catcher. He's a really good catcher. He didn't hit very much, but he's a very good catcher, not a Hall of Fame guy by any means. And then Kelly Gruber at third base. You had yourself one hell of a baseball team, and that's what they were. And it's quite a surprise that they didn't do a little bit of damage the years before. But they always kept running in to those really strong Oakland teams in 1990 and 91 with Canseco and Dave Stewart on the mound. And then you had Mark McGuire and Ricky Henderson, and on it goes, obviously, with those great Oakland teams of the late 80s and 90s. But the Jays finally put it together in 1992. They went out and got some pitching, and that seemed to put them over the hump. Then the next year in 1993, when they went and added the greatest baseball player, in my opinion, to ever play the game, in Slick Rick Henderson, and then they improved their at shortstop. They went and got Tony Fernandez, I think, for the third or fourth time. He wound up hitting 300 when he came back for the Jays that year, and a very good defensive shortstop, probably one of the best that I've ever seen. Then you have Alomar up the middle, who is the best second baseman I've ever seen. You have those two guys up the middle, and you're not going to lose many ball games. And that's what they did. They had a very successful run, obviously, but those teams and those lineups were second to none in baseball. And you go back, to 30 years now. It's crazy. It's been 30 years, but you go back 30 years, there hasn't been many baseball teams in that span. And even before that would match the intensity, would match the lineup through and through that the Toronto Blue Jays had back then. It's remarkable that they were, well, it's too bad 94. Obviously, there was a strike year, and then guys got a little bit long in the tooth and retired, and people move on and everything else. But those teams out of Toronto, you'd be hard pressed for me to think of any other baseball team that would match those guys. The speed of Alomar, the greatest second baseman of all time, in my opinion, or that I've seen. Obviously, that I've seen. Let's not go back and at me about that. But the greatest second baseman I ever seen, yeah, he got in some trouble in the recent years with the Toronto Blue Jays, and whatever happened there, some sexual abuse and assaults and the like. We won't get into that. But the way he played the game, and in that home run that he hit off Eckersley on a Sunday afternoon in October in the ALCS in Oakland, it was unbelievable to watch him doing the chop or the hammer or whatever he was doing when he hit that home run. No, he threw his hands in the air. That's what it was. One of the greatest home runs in Blue Jays history. It ranks up there with the Bautista home run. Obviously, the Bautista home runs, and they're honoring him tomorrow night, I think it is, in Toronto, and he's making the Ring of Honor there in Toronto for the Jays. Bautista, that bat flip, I didn't like that very much when he did it. I was a baseball purist and no fun and get off my lawn kind of guy. But then you look back at the emotion of that game and how Bautista hit that home run without the crazy seventh inning. I think it was a great moment in baseball history. But let's get back to the Alomar home run. that really catapulted them into serious. Okay, these guys are for real. They're going to do it this year, because everybody always had their doubts that they couldn't get by Oakland. They couldn't win the big one. Then Alomar, he got it done that night or that afternoon in Oakland, and it's like I said, one of the greatest home runs in Blue Jays history, if not the greatest home run in Blue Jays history. I guess you have the Joe Carter one to win the game, but they're probably going to win that game anyways. A guy on base in extra innings, but yeah, still did it right. But no, it's fun to think about those teams, and beating the Oakland A's that year, and then beating a powerhouse Atlanta Braves team who should have won a bunch of World Series in the 90s with that pitching staff with Glavine, Smoltz, Maddox, and the like, and everything they had going for them. How they didn't win more World Series in the 90s. Yeah, I guess they ran into the Jays, and then they ran into the Yankees, and so it goes, right? But you wonder how many they would have won, but they didn't. It's one of those things. But for the Jays to beat that powerhouse Atlanta team, that powerhouse Oakland team, and then the next year they played a Chicago White Sox team in the ALCS with an even stronger team with Ricky Henderson, like I said, and then a World Series victory over the bad boys of baseball back then, the Philadelphia Phillies. It was a really fun time to be a baseball fan here in Canada, and people really forget. Maybe it's because Canadian bias a little bit, like I said, but people down in the States, they didn't get the same influx that we had of getting inundated minute by minute, hour by hour, in every newspaper, everything. It was always Blue Jays all the time, right? Because they were only team here in Canada. They got a 35 million, 30 million, whatever it is in Canada now, but they had a 30 million person fan base, probably one of the biggest fan bases in baseball, right? One of those things. So everybody was on the backs of that, and it was a fun time to be a baseball fan, not just a Blue Jays fan, but a baseball fan here in Canada. And those teams will always be held in high regard. John Olerud chasing 400 that year. You had the home run chase, on and on it went. Those teams were great. They were very personable. Kelly Gruber was a fun guy to have on your baseball team in '92. The grit of Pat Borders behind the plate. The pitching staff in '93, when they added Dave Stewart, Hall of Fame guy, they added him to the lineup, and he was unbelievable. And remember Dave Wells, he was a guy out of the bullpen in '92. So all those guys combined, then you had Juan Guzman, number 66, who'd never lose in his Jerry Curl hairdo and the whole bit. Like those teams were something else. I don't want to compare them, because I think that the Yankees pitching staff in '98 was better, but offensively, you'd be hard pressed to say that the '98 Yankees were better than the '92-'93 Blue Jays, in my opinion. Yes, the pitching staff, like I just said, was better, but the '98 Yankees, they were powerhouse. Those '92-'93 teams, they were something to behold on a nightly basis. The Jack Morris, Jimmy Key, the pitching staff, Juan Guzman, Todd Stottlemyre, Dave Stieb, just all stars up and down the lineup, coming out night in, night out to win 96 games, which is tough to do in that American League East back then. It wasn't great, but it was still very, very tough to do. But yeah, it was a fun time to be a baseball fan here in Canada. It really kind of got things on the blocks for the Jays. They haven't done anything since, but there was a lot of years back then, like '85, they went to the American League playoffs and got beaten. In '87, they lost on the last day of the season to the Tigers. I could have those backwards or whatever it is, but you just remember the days in the old exhibition stadium where they wasn't really a ballpark, and then they didn't really have major league looking uniforms. But when they went to the Sky Dome, things changed quite a bit for that franchise and for baseball in Canada. And people thought, hey, this is our team. They're a real baseball team in a real stadium, state-of-the-art stadium that they haven't replicated since. And now they're doing a bunch of renos there. But it's funny, people talk about how great the Sky Dome was back then, and nobody even tried to build it again. They're like, oh, this is a pain in the ass. We don't need anything like that. But no, being a baseball fan back then, like I said, it was something to behold and something to see, and it was always great to get a chance to watch those teams. And you go back and through your own memory, maybe your memory gets skewed a little bit, because everything's always better 20 and 30 years later. But you remember the joy of those teams. You remember where you were. Those where you moments in Canadian sports history that everybody who was my age or right around this vintage, that they remember for sure where they were, or what happened on those two World Series championships that we got brought back to Canada for the first and only time so far. And then you remember all the negative stigma that they had in Atlanta when the Canadian flag was put up on the soldiers who come onto the field. The flag was upside down the whole bit. So there's a little bit of outrage throughout Canada. It's like, as mad as Canadians get about that kind of stuff, we tend to let that stuff water off the old duck's back. I guess we don't get too worried about that kind of stuff. But it's like I said, it's fun to think about those things. Me and Dave started talking about the Who Was Better last night, and so we had a few laughs and reminiscing about those teams and the greatness that they have, because you'd be hard pressed to see see anybody better than Whamco. 1-5, and then you had, like I said, add Ricky Henderson, and you have a Dave Winfield, Hall of Fame guy on the back end, hitting it as a DH in the '92 World Series. Molitor was great in the playoffs, another Hall of Fame guy. I think he won the MVP the second year too. Just unbelievable to watch. And like I said, the pitching staffs that they had over the years, and Tom Hankey, David Wells, Dwayne Ward, Pat Hankin coming out of the bullpen, just phenomenal teams. The best that money could buy. Obviously, they had the highest payroll. People tend to forget that. I had a quite the conversation once with a guy outside of a drinking establishment once, and he was talking about the Yankees, how they always buy World Series. And I asked him what his favorite team was. He said it was a Blue Jays guy, and he says they never had to. They didn't buy a World Series. I said, well, actually, they actually had the highest payroll in baseball when they won the World Series in 1993. So that kind of shut him up pretty quick. But anyways, there's my little talk today for the World Series. Yeah, it's fun to watch those old videos. You pull them up on YouTube, and the grainy images and everything else. But you get past all that, and the memories that flow back. And that's one of the great things about baseball is you can watch those games, and the speed of the game, it looks the same. Like the game looks the same, like compared to hockey and football. The games don't look the same compared to what they were 30 years ago. Whereas baseball, you can see it's still the same game, right? It's still played between the lines. There's 4 bases. Like hockey still has 2 nets. I get it, but it's just a different looking game when you got football and hockey compared to what baseball is. Baseball basically looks the same no matter what. Yeah, it's flashier on the high def and everything else, but it's the same game, and it's really fun to watch those things. Anyways, here's our talk from our friends at Caldera Labs. Caldera Lab, summer is here, guys, and as the sun shines brighter, your skin deserves the utmost attention. Fortunately, our friends at Caldera Lab are here to ensure your skin is well prepared for the season ahead. Ever since I incorporated Caldera Lab into my routine, taking care of my skin has never been simpler. Their products are clinically proven and help visibly reduce wrinkles, fine lines, and signs of aging. Confidence and an impeccable first impression this summer is on the horizon. Don't miss out on joining the skincare revolution trusted by countless men. Use code 1420LAB at calderalab.com to enjoy an exclusive 20% off their finest products. Caldera Lab creates high-performance men's skincare products, and their regimen leads off their product lineup, a twice-a-day routine to transform your skin. Inside this bundle, you'll find the clean slate, the base layer, and the good. Caldera Lab is made with top-tier ingredients. It's a great addition to your daily routine, taking less than a minute morning and night. Here to reduce wrinkles, fine lines, and signs of aging. Enjoy being the butt of everyone's joke this summer by joining Skin Royalty with Caldera Lab. Get 20% off by using our code 1420LAB at calderalab.com and save yourself 20% off and elevate your skincare game this summer. Thank you very much to our friends at Caldera Lab for sponsoring the 1420 Sports Bar podcast. We appreciate all the support. Make sure you guys go out there and get some skin protection, because it does work. It's done wonders for my skin. I've never been a skincare guy before, but I am now, and it's something I got to re-up my subscription and get some more stuff, get some more product sent my way. Anyways, we'll wrap things up with a little bit of Brent's Best Bet, brought to you by our friends at Bodog. Make sure you make a play today at Bodog. Brent's Best Bet brought to you by Bodog. Make a play today at Bodog. Take the Toronto Blue Jays at home tonight over Chicago Cubs to hang on to that last wild card spot in the American League. Next, the resurgent Philadelphia Phillies, winners of 2 in a row. They got that no-hitter on Wednesday night, I think it was. And then they won 2 in a row and 7 of their last 10. Take them to beat the Twins at home tonight. And to cap things off, take the Cincinnati Reds to get out of their recent slide on the road tonight in Pittsburgh and keep pace in the National League wild card race. Reds been tough ever since the trade deadline. They've been 2-8 in the last 10. Hasn't been very, very good for the Reds. They're only a game out of the wild card spot. Hopefully they can keep going. Pick them tonight over Pittsburgh. Put down $20 and get yourself $83.70 tonight at Bodog. Make a play by clicking on our personalized link and get a $400 sign-up bonus today. Remember, if you're going to play, be sure to play responsibly and make a play today at Bodog. Yeah, they'll be up in the show's notes, the link there, and you can get a sign-up bonus and the like. But anyways, thanks very much for listening to the show today. If you were watching for a little bit here on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or wherever you're watching, thank you very much. Make sure you guys listen to our 1420 podcast. It should be out later on today, the recording from last night. And then make sure you talk to other people about the show. Spread the good word of the 1420 Sports Bar podcast, because we appreciate all the support that you've given us. And we are 1 week away from our 3-year anniversary. Crazy. We've been doing this for 3 years. But anyways, things have come a long way since we started with a recording on a phone kind of deal. So it's a lot different than it was 3 years ago. But a lot of fun still. We enjoy putting these out for you guys every day. Anyways, thank you very much for listening, like I said, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And remember, it doesn't matter where you are. It's who you're with. Have a good day, folks. We'll talk to you tomorrow. You just listened to the 1420 Sports Bar Podcast. 4 beer with the sports talk and a whole lot more. We are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Let's get into it.